It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege of interviewing the Pacific University head women's lacrosse coach, Coach Brittany Hartmann. How are you doing today?
Doing well, can't complain.
Thank you. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching in college women's lacrosse?
Yeah, absolutely. So right out of undergrad, I graduated in 2013 from undergrad at Pacific, and then 2014 for grad school. I was offered a position. West Coast lacrosse is pretty small, so the job opportunities are a lot greater than they would be on the East Coast necessarily. So a good friend of mine at the time coached at George Fox University, so she had an opening for a goalie coach slash assistant coach and asked me to come on over. So honestly, it kind of fell into my lap. I always knew I wanted to be a coach. I thought I was going to be a high school teacher and a coach at the high school that I taught at forever, which was definitely a dream job. But then that kind of fell into my lap and took me on a trajectory to where I'm at now. So kind of wild.
What was that experience like for you as a player going to Pacific University and playing?
Um, It was awesome. I had the opportunity to play both soccer and lacrosse all 4 years, which fortunately for me, I didn't have any major injuries that took me out of that, which is pretty common for dual sport athletes. So I was able to do both at a high level, which was so much fun. If I were to go back and do it again, I would do it the exact same way. I was a chemistry major, physics minor, so I did not sleep a whole lot, which to my dismay, definitely could have affected my performance, I'm sure. But these are things we know as adults, as opposed to being student athletes in college. So yeah, it was so fun.
How was that experience like for you as you stated that you were a dual athlete in both in soccer and lacrosse?
So originally, when I started playing competitive sports, I was into competitive soccer, which is much bigger in the United States, specifically on the West Coast. And over time, playing year-round competitive soccer, I started to get a bit burnt out, which is pretty common. And so my high school freshman year, they approached me, the lacrosse team approached me and said, "Hey, we need a goalie for lacrosse. It's totally the same thing. You'll love it." It's not the same thing in any way, shape, or form, but figured out that I really enjoyed the kind of break I got to take from soccer, playing a sport that I'd never played before, and kind of learning how to do that. So, having that balance of lacrosse being that kind of joy of this brand new thing. You remember when you're a little kid and you first start playing sports, you have this like joy that you just show up to, and it's just so much fun. And so for me, soccer was a little bit more serious, and so I had kind of was able, not that I didn't take lacrosse seriously, obviously, but I was able to kind of take a break, mental brain break from each season, by having that different vibe at each sport, I suppose.
For you getting to represent both programs, a soccer program and a lacrosse program, what was that like getting to put on that uniform for both programs?
It was incredible. It was really honestly something that I probably took for granted as a student athlete. I didn't have as many opportunities to play multiple sports when I was a little kid. So being able to do both of those in college at a high level was just so awesome. I started out as a goalie for lacrosse, and was fortunate enough to, once another goalie came in, we had very different skill sets. And so we started splitting time, and I had the opportunity to play field. So it was kind of a situation where I could play at a high level, and lacrosse was awesome because I got to run a bit more. I was always in the gym, kind of a gym rat, so to speak. So it was nice to be able to use that, as opposed to in soccer, you don't always get to run as a goalie. So yeah, oh my gosh, it was awesome. I loved it.
What was that experience like for you transitioning into being from a player to getting into coaching and first becoming an assistant coach?
Yeah. Honestly, because I was such a young assistant coach, it was was really difficult in terms of making sure that I unplug from my player brain and plug back into a coach brain, making sure that I set boundaries with athletes and make sure that, it's easy. Luckily, I was at a different institution when I was coaching collegiately, but if there are a lot of coaches that go straight into coaching the same team that they played for. I don't know how any teams do that. It's pretty wild. So I had to really set boundaries and make sure that I wasn't trying to be their friend. I was trying to be their coach and make them better and try to help them grow. So it was a pretty difficult transition on that front, just making sure that my goals and my way of coaching was different than being a teammate. That being said, my communication didn't necessarily change. I was always a goalkeeper for either one. So you're honestly almost coaching the whole time while you're playing as a goalkeeper, because you see the whole field both in lacrosse and soccer. So I felt like that communication piece of being able to direct my team and help them from that lens was really helpful. So yeah, my strong suit for lacrosse is obviously goalie and defense oriented. So it was also a little bit difficult. I had to kind of teach myself how to run and attack, which is, something that's pretty obviously necessary in the lacrosse world. So it was kind of interesting.
Going to Lindenfield College, what was that experience like becoming a head coach for the first time there?
Yeah. Kind of wild. At the time I was full-time teaching. So I was teaching at Yamhill Carleton High School, chemistry, physics, engineering, and rocketry. I had a lot of preps, which was not easy. And then, just the situation that the team was in, the head coach left a week before season and they gave me a call and they're like, "Hey, we need you." And I'm not the type that's going to turn that back. It was too good of an opportunity to pass up. So even though I was full-time teaching and full-time coaching, which was wild, I think it was definitely worth it.
What was your time like at George Fox as the assistant coach?
I learned a lot at that institution. I think it was really helpful. At the time, the head coach and I had a few different value systems that I think I learned how to orchestrate my value system and my philosophy as a coach. And I learned a lot of tactics that I had not really necessarily done. The head coach at the time played at Fresno State. So her knowledge and IQ was tremendous. I learned a great deal from her. And then I also learned a lot about player management and how to interact with players and making sure that, everything is functioning the way that it needs to be functioning. I learned a lot, honestly. I'm a big proponent of being a student of the game and a student of other coaches. So, I got to kind of show what I wanted and what I didn't want if I were to step into a head coaching position. So,
While at Lindenfield College, what was some of your biggest accomplishments as a head coach?
that was the first successful year Linfield had in a very long time. I think we were, and definition of success is a little bit gray, but I think we were we were just below a 500 record. So I think we had 6 wins and 8 losses or something like that. It was just below. So honestly, being able to do that while full-time full-time teaching and coaching and trying to recruit, I think it was pretty wild. But obviously it gave me a lot of experience of what to do and what not to do and how to run a program. It was trial by fire for sure.
How was that experience like for you coming back to your alma mater and getting to coach as a head coach?
It's a dream job, honestly. Pacific is a really cool space in how the atmosphere is truly a family. Everyone walks around and truly cares about the success of your program, the success of the school, etc. And I think it's a very different vibe than what I had at some of the other institutions. Lacrosse itself is not historically a supported sport on the West Coast. They exist, but from what I can tell, a lot of times it only exists because it's a Title IX ad, if that makes sense. But I think, and don't get me wrong, George Fox is super supported now. I think it took a couple years for them to get there and have that success under their belt. But yeah, I think a lot of times on the West Coast, it's not as well supported. So being in a space where it is supported has been pretty cool.
For you as a coach and an alma mater, what was that feeling like stepping onto the field for the first time as a head coach at your school?
Terrifying. My first year, I had 15 athletes on my roster. Unfortunately, a previous coach from the East Coast, her value system didn't quite mesh well with West Coast lacrosse, let alone Pacific lacrosse. And so they went from the conference champions in 2015 and 16 to when she took over for 2017, 2018 seasons, they went winless, which was a really quick turnaround. Many reasons led into that. It's not just that coach, but recruiting obviously was not super existent for that winless season. And so I had 7 athletes that had played lacrosse before on my roster. And so I had to recruit at club fair and find kids and athletes that would play. So, oh my gosh, it was wild. I think by the end we had 3 season ending injuries. One of them was my goalie. And so I had to turn a field player into a goalie that year. It was just chaos, absolute chaos. And I was full-time teaching for 1 more year because of a contract that I had for teaching. So luckily Pacific was super awesome and allowed me to be able to do that. But oh my gosh, it was a wild year. It's all a blur. But somehow at the end of it, we pulled off 2 wins that year, which was 200% more than the year previous. So felt pretty good about that. And then my team was just so pumped to be there. I think the feedback we had was like, we loved the year. I wish we had had more time because we finally figured out how to play lacrosse by the end, which was pretty wild. So yeah, it was terrifying and awesome and just crazy.
What has that process been like rebuilding the culture from when you were a player?
It's been tough, I will say. When I was a player, obviously we were really good. We would have won the conference tournament if there had been enough teams in the conference. I feel like I've kind of been a part of the growth of the Northwest Conference all the way through. There were 3 teams in our conference, us, Linfield, and Puget Sound. And when I was a student athlete, and then we've slowly been growing. We're gonna have 9 in the 2025 season next year, so that's really cool. But I think trying to find that championship culture has been one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in the middle of a pandemic. You look at stats, kids want to go to places that are successful. So it's really hard. I think honestly, it's easier to build a brand new program than what I've tried to do. But I feel like we finally have, like, last year was one of the most successful years the team has had since 2017, which is pretty exciting. So we're building, we're growing. It's been a long road and really difficult, but I'm really excited for the future.
What does a typical game day look like for you as a head coach versus for your players?
Yeah. I'm a super anxious person, so I have to work out in the mornings to get some of that nervous energy out, so that I can kind of have my head in the right space. So do a quick workout, head into the get coffee. Coffee's the number one for sure, which is, who knows, probably not good for the anxiety, but we got to survive. So yeah, get some coffee. Typically I get that pregame scout to them by Wednesday or Thursday if we have a Saturday game. So pretty much anything has already been laid out. I'm a big planner, so our student athletes have already worked through things at practices. We go through the scouting report as part of our practice plan. So we're like, this team likes to do this, and we kind of have a scouting team, which there's only 18 on our roster, so we can't have a full scout team. But we do have the ability to at least kind of run through what people like to do so that we can be prepared for it, if that makes sense. So everything's already drawn out. And so we meet as a team about an hour and a half to 2 hours before our game, especially if it's a home game. And then they get hyped in the locker room, and then we all walk out together. So yeah, pretty easy going.
Who are
They
some of,
obviously first.
who are some of
Sorry.
the teams in your conference that you compete against each week?
We have right now 8 teams, so there are 7 that we compete against. George Fox, Willamette, Whitman and Whitworth, University of Puget Sound, Lewis and Clark, and Linfield. And then next year we are adding Pacific Lutheran, and well, I guess Lewis and Clark is going to add for our actual conference, but they are a full team this year. They're just not playing a conference schedule. So yeah, pretty exciting.
What is that home game atmosphere like when teams like George Fox comes to your home facility?
George Fox I have a lot of respect for their coach. She is awesome. That's honestly the most fun game every year. Yes, they are the top competition that we play against, and a lot of times they trounce us. We've been closing that gap every year though, so this year's our year. I'm feeling it. But I think the cool thing is that Katie, their head coach, is really into growing the game, especially for the conference, because it makes our conference get on the map. So that George Fox has done a really good job of getting regionally ranked, going to get opponents outside of our region to help kind of boost that strength of schedule. So it's pretty fun to kind of play against them. The best thing is that our team may not be the best lacrosse players compared to George Fox. However, I'm also a strength and conditioning coach. So my team may not be the best lacrosse players, but they're very fit. So we're pretty strong. And so when we go up against George Fox, the strength is matched, physical strength, if that makes sense. So I think they're in better running shape, obviously, but the physical strength hitting the gym is pretty well matched, which is awesome. Honestly, we had one game we played against them, which if you're familiar with lacrosse, we have an 8-meter position shot, and those happen probably about 4 or 5 times a quarter. And so about 20 times a game. There was one half where we had 0 8-meters the entire time, which means there were no defensive fouls the entire time, which is unheard of. And I think that's a testament to the physical strength match, if that makes sense. So pretty wild.
What is that like getting to travel on the road and playing teams like Lindenfield?
Linfield, yeah. It's fun. Honestly, those are pretty close together. So we drive the morning of. Linfield's about 45 minutes away. We actually passed the school that I taught at for 5 years, which is kind of fun. But we go out to the location. We hit up a room of some kind, do a little bit of a pregame talk. Like I said, most of them have already seen the scouting report for the last couple days. So a lot of it is just getting hyped and getting ready for the game. So yeah, pretty fun.
What does that recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes looking to play college lacrosse?
Yeah. Do you mean in the context of like what do I do in order to recruit, or what does it look like for the student athlete themselves?
What do you do to recruit, and what does the student athletes?
Yeah. My favorite way to uh, recruit is at camps and clinics. So either getting them to come out to my campus, or I go to a camp or a clinic to work with them directly. The reason why I prefer that over watching them at tournaments is because I get to coach them. So they get to A, feel my coaching style, and B, I get to see if they're coachable. My student athletes, so to speak, they're stuck with me for 4 years and vice versa. So I want to make sure it's someone that I like that's also going to be reciprocated, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's pretty fun to work with them directly. I do watch tournaments, obviously. So there are a lot of tournaments all around the country. There's a bunch of them on the East Coast. So I try to hit up one East Coast tournament every year. Historically, I've been able to get an East Coast player out here at least once. One or two every year in my recruiting class. So currently we have a Maryland kid on our roster. We're looking at a couple South Carolina kids and things like that, which is pretty wild to be able to get them to come out all the way to a D3 on the West Coast. But they love the school, they love the atmosphere. So that's been pretty cool. Yeah, so then for a student athlete, if they email me, I'm a big proponent of responding, even if it's someone that we maybe not have seen before or something along those lines. Obviously, our growth of the sport has been pretty slow on the West Coast, especially with the pandemic. So I try to respond to every single person that emails me, at least with, hey, like send me film. Are you coming to these tournaments, etc. Just to kind of put those feelers out there and see if they're interested in coming to Pacific.
What does that official visit look like at Pacific and seeing them fall in love with the facility?
Yeah. Well, we are the only school in the conference that has an indoor field house, which if you check up on our website, it's pretty cool. And so it's about 2/3 of a full field. And so we get the opportunity to play there. We play wall ball in there. We do play indoor box lacrosse sometimes, which is really fun. And then we also have the opportunity to play out on the stadium, which I would argue our stadium is one of the best in the conference. It's huge. It has a covered stadium or covered bleachers, which is really nice in Oregon when it rains quite a bit. So yeah, oh my gosh, it's awesome. we have a giant screen where we get to play instant replays on or GIFs of our players, whoever just scored a goal, etc. It's pretty cool. So yeah.
As a head coach in an alma mater, what is it like seeing those freshmen put on that uniform for the first time?
It's very cool. I try to make sure that they get the number they want, and I also try to make sure that we get new uniforms every couple years, and so they're fresh, they're clean, they're it's really awesome to be able to see that. Media day is their favorite time at the beginning of the year. They get the opportunity to go in front of the camera and make fools of themselves, and also look pretty baller. So yeah, it's pretty exciting to kind of see them. We have 8 freshmen this year, so quite a few in the rankings to fill that.
How is it like getting to see those freshmen score those first milestone points in their career?
I don't know about for this year yet, but it's going to be pretty awesome. We had our alumni game so far, and a couple of them scored goals. One of our defenders scored 2 goals, which was wild, and that was pretty exciting. So, yeah, I mean, just seeing the joy on their face that they've made it, they're in the collegiate game, is pretty cool.
What is it like getting to see those seniors put on that uniform for the last time?
Devastating. I lead by building relationships with my athletes and making sure that they know that I care about them. I'm never going to have kids, so I get what I want out of parenting by coaching. And I think it's really cool to kind of see their growth over the 4 years working with them and seeing how much love and effort and blood, sweat, and tears, you name it, they put into the sport. So seeing them put it on for the last time, it kills me every time. I cry like a baby every pregame. So, but it's so worth it. It's so inspiring. Especially seeing them come back for the alumni game is really fun.
What is it like getting to see them go on and playing professional lacrosse, whether it's Athletes Unlimited or the US route?
Sadly, I don't have any that are going to go on to that. West Coast lacrosse is just not there yet, especially not all West Coast lacrosse. There has been some. Like if you look at some of the players that are in the AU right now, Lauren Gilbert, she was an Oregonian, which is pretty cool. A couple others, you look at Rachel Hall, former BC goalie. She transferred from Oregon, which is pretty cool. To go to BC. So seeing those athletes, I'm a big lacrosse nerd. I watch lacrosse all the time, whether it's collegiate lacrosse or AU or for the US team, I watch it all the time. And so it's really cool to be able to kind of see the growth of our sport, especially now that we're adding the Olympics for 2028. They're adding Olympic sixes, which if you've ever watched that played, it's very similar to what they play in AU Pro. And man, it's awesome. The athleticism, everything. I love it.
What is it like as a coach seeing your players go on and into coaching and taking what you've taught them?
I've only had a few go on into collegiate coaching, but almost all of them that I've seen graduate have gone into at least high school or youth or middle school coaching. And it's very cool. I'm a big proponent of growing the game. I'm also on the board for Oregon Girls Lacrosse Association. So Oregon lacrosse is big for me. Being able to grow that from the bottom all the way up to the top has been a passion of mine, obviously, for a very long time. So it's really cool to see them give back to the game, a game that quite literally changed my life for the positive. So very, very cool. I get a lot of phone calls from my former athletes looking into coaching or want a reference or anything along those lines. So yeah, very cool.
What are some of your future plans for the Pacific University's lacrosse program?
I want to get into the conference tournament. Last year was the first year of the conference tournament, which has been a long time coming. We finally voted as a coaching body to be able to add that, and it finally got approved. Change in bureaucracy is slow, as I'm sure you know. So, being able to get that and have that opportunity has been very good for our conference and very good for our sport. So, top 4 go. My goal is to get there for this year, and then who knows after that.
What advice would you give those incoming freshmen entering their first year of college lacrosse?
Don't take it for granted. I think I saw this reel the other day from a former JMU player, and she mentioned that so many athletes have what it takes to get into the college and to get a commitment and to join that program, but how many athletes have the desire and have what it takes to push through and be able to stay within that program and stay relevant and stay valid. So I think a lot of high school athletes are like, yeah, I finally committed, like it's there, like the journey has finished. But once you get to college, you have to put in the work. So I guess my advice to freshmen is to keep hungry and keep working.
What advice would you give those college players out there looking to play professionally on the AU Athletes Unlimited?
Same idea. Keep working. Keep being willing to put in the work, to grind. That alarm goes off, don't ignore it. Get up and go work out and go do what you need to do to hit the wall, to get your stick skills, etc.
What advice would you give those players looking to get into college coaching?
Find a mentor. I think the only thing that helped me survive is finding someone that I respect, that I trust, that I can run ideas by. When I first got into coaching, I sat down with at the time, the reigning Oregon High School State Championship team. They had won 6 seasons in a row, which is wild. She has since retired from coaching, sadly. But I sat down with her and was like, tell me like what you do on a daily basis. Like, what do I need to know as a first year coach? And she was like, find a philosophy. Make sure that you have a plan with parents. Don't talk to parents about playing time, blah, blah, blah. And just gave me all of these really helpful tidbits that I think helped shape me. So she's a human that I still interact with and still communicate with, even though she's kind of left the game. But truly was a mentor of mine that helped me get to where I am today.
What advice would you give those players out there looking to coach at their alma mater?
I think for me, one of the hardest things was to adapt to the changes in generational athletes. And what I mean by that is, I think athletes have changed. Not I think, I know. Athletes have changed since when I was a student athlete, and that was, what, 10 short years ago. So I think it's important to be willing and recognize that nothing is ever going to be the same as it was when you were a student athlete. So I can't just demand things the same way that my coaches demanded of them of me, or I can't demand things in the same way that I demanded them of my teammates. Things have changed. You have to be willing to adapt on a daily basis, on a regular basis, and be able to find a way to motivate student athletes in a very attention deficit world, I would say. I think social media has really kind of given them instant gratification. So finding a way to help motivate those athletes and continue to help them buy in when the pandemic and social media, you name it, has really made a bit of a selfish society, I would say. So trying to help my athletes see outside of that and realize what it means to be a part of a team and how to build that team as a whole.
What advice would you give those future head coaches looking to build their own program and build their own legacy?
Come up with a philosophy and be willing to adapt that. Know exactly who you are and what you value as a coach. We do values-based goal setting every year, both with our team and as a coaching staff. So I think making sure that you know what your values are. For me, obviously hard work is one of them, accountability, and then inclusivity is something that's huge for me. So making sure all of my athletes feel included is something that truly helps them feel safe in a space that isn't always, athletics for women is not always very safe. So making sure that they feel that inclusivity on from the top all the way down, if that makes sense.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you on social media along with the team at?
You can follow us at Pacific Lax. You can also follow me at Coach_Britt Hartmann. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, but if you look up Britt Hartmann, you'll probably find it. But feel free to follow me or my team.
Thank you again, Coach Britt Hartmann, for your interview, and best of luck in your future at Pacific University.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Britt Hartmann, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thanks.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.